Good morning, everybody. I have come to you to talk about does muscle burn more calories than fat? Now, first thing we need to talk about is I'm talking about resting. So, resting metabolism, resting energy expenditure, resting how many calories does muscle burn resting compared to fat resting? The reason why we have to talk about this and we cannot include exercise or activity with this is because fat leads to zero uptake in oxygen or energy expenditure during exercise because fat doesn't do anything during exercise. Muscle is doing all the work. Muscle is moving your bones, moving your joints, all of that good stuff. And so they are being active in exercise or activity, whereas fat is not at all. So we are talking about complete resting energy expenditure, which is what is really funny to talk about because if you're a trainer like myself, I've told my clients, hey, we want to build more muscle because that's going to boost your metabolism and that's what's going to keep the weight off longer and yada, yada, yada. And upon recent research, upon doing some own critical thinking, which I'll work you through some of the examples here, it's just not that true. But I do want to say there are three things in this video, and I'm reading some notes here so I don't mess up on anything. So there's three things I want you to know. We're going to figure out how many more calories does muscle burn than fat. We're going to figure out, is it enough to bank your weight loss and body composition goals on? Meaning, are we really just searching for more muscle, more muscle, more muscle, or should we just search for some other things? And then what is the true benefit of building muscle, right? And so we'll talk about those three things. What you did not hear me say, so don't put words in my mouth, is that I'm not saying building muscle is pointless. And I'm not saying it doesn't help with your weight loss goal and it doesn't help with your body composition goals. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is it's not as great as we think it is. It's not as, oh my gosh, build muscle and you're going to become this amazing fat burning machine and you're going to be so lean and you're going to be so metabolically active, meaning you're just burning a ton of calories all day long. You're going to become this furnace of metabolism and heat, right? That's not what's happening here. Okay. So let's talk about some things. First, we need to talk about your goals. None of this is applicable unless you apply it to your goals. And I'm going to explain the difference between a weight loss goal and a weight gain goal. Okay. If you have a weight loss goal, what you need to understand is that you are in a caloric deficit. You are eating less calories than your body is burning every single day. If you have a weight loss goal, 9 times out of 10, you are going to be losing weight from fat and muscle. So if you're losing weight, you're also losing muscle. So building muscle is almost impossible to do while you have a weight loss goal. Now, there's a couple ways that we can build muscle while we're losing weight. And that is one, if you are really obese. Really obese people who are significantly overweight have been shown to be able to build muscle while in a caloric deficit. And I'm assuming that's because they have so much stored energy that the muscle can still pull and function and grow and recover from all of those stores. Another way we can do it is if you're very new to exercise. If you never strength train, you've never exercised, and now all of a sudden you get up off the couch and you're going to go start lifting weights, you are probably going to build some muscle along your weight loss journey. And then three would be the use of supplementations or steroids or not so legal, not so healthy things. You can also build muscle while losing weight. 95% of us probably don't fit that category. So while you are losing weight, you are also going to be losing muscle. So if you have a weight loss goal, building muscle is not in your realm. Now, don't confuse that with strength. A lot of people on their weight loss journey always report, I feel stronger. And oftentimes we correlate that with I'm building muscle, and that is not true. When you get stronger, it could be a couple different things. First thing it could be is your body's getting better at the movements you're doing. Imagine if you either are brand new to doing squats or you don't do squats very often, and now you start squatting regularly because you have this goal and you've been working out regularly. Well, your body's going to get better at performing squats. As it gets better, you're going to feel like you're getting stronger. You're going to be able to lift more weights during your squat, but it's not because you built muscle. It's because your nervous system just was able to figure out how to do squats better and more efficiently, to include being able to activate more motor units during the range of motion. So being able to activate more motor units is a nervous system adaptation And that nervous system adaptation is going to make squats feel easier so that you can go heavier. But again, we have not built muscle yet. Okay. So strength and hypertrophy are different. Just because you're getting stronger does not mean that you are building muscle. Okay. Let's take the opposite. Let's say you want to gain weight. Well, when we're gaining weight and we want to gain that weight from muscle, we have to be in a caloric surplus. If we're in a caloric surplus, it also means we're going to be gaining fat. So we're gaining muscle and we're gaining fat, and we see our result is the scale going up in weight total, right? It is very hard for the scale to stay the same, and we have a perfect 50-50 split between I lost some muscle mass, or I'm sorry, I lost some fat mass and I gained muscle mass. It's almost impossible. Very rarely will someone have the discipline, the lifestyle, the schedule, the routine, their diet, their training critiqued so perfectly that we see a perfect flip flop. I lost 2 pounds of fat, I gained 2 pounds of muscle. It almost never happens. Okay. So those are kind of the two big things. I want to lose weight, I want to gain weight, and throwing in that caveat of if the scale is stuck and you just think that you're losing a bunch of fat and it's just being replaced with a bunch of muscle, you're wrong. Now, let's say we get into a state where we are building muscle. Let's talk about how much muscle is realistic for someone to gain. And that is very slow. It's like 1 to 2 pounds a month, maybe. So if I have my InBody here, which is not the most accurate thing in the world, but it says that I'm 110 pounds of muscle, and it says that I have 34 pounds of fat mass, which means that my percent of body fat is 15%. So let's say I set out on a goal. I want to take my 110 pounds of muscle, I want to put it up to 115 pounds of muscle. That will take me north of 5, 6, 7 months to do. Okay. Now, that is a lofty goal. That is a very hard goal to do naturally. It's a very hard goal to do with just life in general because we're going to fall off track. And so that's why I say north of 5 months, because very rarely does a training program go perfectly. And I would gain 5 pounds in 5 months if everything went perfectly. Okay. So taking that all into consideration, we've got our goals, we've got what actually happens with our goals. So again, remember, if you're losing weight, you're probably losing muscle. If you're gaining weight, you're also probably gaining fat. Very rarely do we see this perfect lost 2 pounds of fat, gain 2 pounds of muscle. Realistic muscle gain, 1 pound per month, maybe. That's a big maybe. Okay. Now, outside of those goals, let's talk about a couple different things. One, strength training doesn't burn that much more calories than regular cardio does, right? Like, well, Joseph, we're lifting a bunch of heavy weights and it's really tiring and whatever the case may be. But you have to remember that strength training is actually more interval based. So if you strength train for an hour, I want you to record the time you're actively doing sets, right? You do a set of 10, you take a break, you do a set of 12, you take a break, you do a set of 15, you take a break, whatever the case may be. You're resting longer than you are working. So to say that strength training burns more calories than cardio, also probably not very true. They're probably pretty comparative, right? One might be more than the other depending on how actual intense you work. We're going to talk about that here in a second. But not that impressive. Not enough to say, hey, go strength train because you're going to burn more calories. Not exactly true. Depends on the training style, depends on your effort and your intensity. Okay. And so we talk about strength training in the form of intervals, but they're not really high intensity intervals like we would do a high intensity training or circuit. Okay. So not that impressive there. Now, when we talk about intensity, most of us aren't following a strength training program. We just go to the gym because we like to go to the gym. And so therefore we can't sit here and say, oh, I'm actually getting stronger, because most of us aren't tracking it. And so if you are tracking it, kudos to you. Very proud of you. You're doing what 99% of the world, including myself, probably doesn't do. We just go to the gym and we just lift some weights. That's what we do. All righty. Now, without tracking your workouts, you're probably not working that hard. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory way. I'm telling you even from my own experience. We go to the gym and we kind of just go through the motions. We actually aren't really pushing ourselves. We aren't going to failure or even close to failure. We're sticking to that comfort zone of whatever weight we're doing for whatever rep ranges we're doing. And it's very hard to push ourselves outside of that very often, right? Now, so on and so forth. You can always have like a spotter there with you, or maybe you're on a machine and you want to push yourself a set or two to go to failure. And those sets were at a pretty high intensity, but the other 90% of your sets are just kind of like going through the motion, muscle activation, mind muscle connection, all of that good stuff, but not a very high intensity set or session on a regular basis. So again, strength training is not burning that many more calories, if any, than cardio. And then we always talk about the afterburn of strength training, or EPOC, excess post-oxygen consumption. Also not that impressive. This is the mindset of, hey, if you strength train or you do high intensity training, and when you stop, you're going to be burning a bunch of calories outside of that training session. It's not true. It's less than we think it is, okay? Because we know that the way that we burn calories is through an exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. And we can correlate that with our heart rate. So if we have a high level of carbon dioxide, we need to get that out, and we need to get good oxygen in, which is correlated with heart rate and respiration rate. About a minute or two after you're done working out, your heart rate comes back down really close to resting levels, and your respiration comes down really close to resting levels. You might still be sweating. We all should know that sweat is a terrible indicator of a good workout or how many calories are burning. I can eat more protein and start sweating. I can walk outside and start sweating. Doesn't mean that I'm burning a bunch of calories, okay? So heart rate and respiration rate, we know within a couple minutes after any exercise that you do, those are going to return back to normal levels. So this EPOC, this excess post-oxygen consumption, is not that great. It is there. It is there, and it is there more when you are doing high-intensity training, but it's still not that great because our recovery is pretty good, okay? Now, in the beginning of a new workout or a new exercise session that you've never done before, or you've gone from sedentary to a class, or whatever the case may be, it is going to take you longer to recover. So that EPOC is going to be greater in the beginning of a new training program or the beginning of a new goal that you may have, but your body's very adaptable. So after the first couple of weeks, maybe the first 4 to 6 weeks, you're not going to see the benefits of EPOC as you did in the beginning of this new program. Okay. So again, not to dog on strength training. You did not hear me say strength training is not helpful. It's not useful. Let's just go back to cardio. That is not what I said at all. I'm just telling you the facts behind things you hear trainers say, myself included. EPOC is greater when you're working out and you're doing strength training, so don't do cardio. You burn a bunch more calories while you're strength training than cardio, so you got to do strength training. It's just simply not true. Okay, it's just simply not true. And anyone who tells you that you can lose weight and build muscle at the same time, also not true, unless you're one of those 3 categories that we talked about earlier. All right, so that's the intro. I hope I gave you a foundation of goals. I hope I gave you a foundation of what strength training comparative to cardio does and is. I hope you got a background and a foundation in intensity and why that is important. I hope you got a background in EPOC, or the afterburn, and why that can help in the beginning, but it's probably not helping us anymore later on down the road. And so now let's dive into muscle mass and fat mass metabolism and energy expenditure. So research is all over the place. It's getting less and less exciting as new research comes out. Okay, so I pulled up 3 pretty much good options, reputable websites, things like that, reputable research articles to give us 3 ideas of what's out there. And then we're going to follow it up with a 4th idea that I created by myself to just explain why some of these ideas are just crazy. They just don't make sense, okay? So option number 1, the one we are going to pick on the most, it says that muscles burn 6 calories per pound per hour. 6 calories per pound per hour. That's a lot of calories. It's about 144 calories per day per pound of muscle. Okay. I have 110 pounds of muscle. If I have 110 pounds of muscle, I will do the math for you real quick. 110 pounds of muscle burning 6 calories. So we're going to time that by 6. and there's 24 hours in a day because it says per hour, we're going to times that by 24. This shows that my muscle mass is burning 15,000 calories. That's impossible. The average person eats 2 to 3,000 calories a day. If I was burning 15,000 calories a day from my muscle mass, I would be dead. I would have starved to death. So there's no way that I can eat 15,000 calories. Okay. To comparative to fat to burn 2 calories per hour per pound. Okay, which is about 48 calories a day per pound of fat mass. The difference there is 96 calories. 144 to 48 is 96. Okay, minus that out. So what this is saying, and what this article was saying, was that if you flip-flop, if you lose a pound of fat and you gain a pound of muscle, you're going to be burning an extra 96 calories a day for that 1 pound. Now remember that building that 1 pound of muscle could take a month, could take 2 months, could take 3 months, depending on your program and your nutrition, right? So you're fighting months and months on end for an extra 96 calories. But if we do the totals, like I just did, 110 pounds of muscle times 6 times 24 hours in a day, it's not true. It just simply doesn't make sense, okay? But that was one research article out there. And that research article, I do think, probably fueled a lot of us to say, oh my gosh, muscle mass is very metabolically active. It's burning 96 extra calories a day compared to fat. We got to build muscle, we got to build muscle, we got to build muscle. But when you do the total, when you say, okay, well, if that's true for 1 pound, it's got to be true for all of my pounds. It can't just be the new muscle that I build. It has to be for my current muscle as well. And my current muscle is 110 pounds of muscle. So I do the same equation, the same math, and get an astronomical number. Doesn't make sense, okay? Option number 2, muscle contributes to about 20% of your total calories burned with your BMR, or your resting metabolism, your basal metabolic rate, about 20%. So with some math, if I burn 2,000 calories a day, which is pretty average at rest, remember, 400 of those calories are going to come from my muscle. And then fat contributes to about 5% of your basal metabolic rate. So of those same 2,000 calories, about 100 are going to come from my fat. Now that's a 300 calorie per day difference. And this is not talking about building muscle. This is just saying what you currently have going on. If you're burning about 2,000 calories a day at rest, your basal metabolic rate, there's a 300 calorie difference between what your fat is doing and what your muscle is doing. Now that's pretty cool. So let's take those numbers and let's say, well, if muscle contributes to about 20% of my basal metabolic rate, what if I gained 20% of muscle mass? So what we got is I have 110 pounds of muscle. And if I multiply that out by 20%, it's 22 pounds. So if I added 20% muscle, I would have an additional 22 pounds of muscle mass, okay? Which would put me at about 134 pounds total, right? So what I want you to know is that just because you increased your muscle by 20% doesn't mean that you also increased your metabolism by 20%. You actually only did 20% of 20%, which is only 4%, okay? So what we're doing is we're saying, hey, I increased, and again, gaining 20 pounds of muscle is like super hard. It can take years to do that. But let's say we did do it. We're actually only having an increase of energy expenditure of about 4%. So you've worked years to have an uptick in your metabolism by about 4%. Now, remember, as we have a weight loss goal, your metabolism and your muscle mass is also going to go down. So this would be if I really just tried for a couple years to build as much muscle as possible, to include gaining weight. Well, now I see this 4% uptake in just this 20% over here. Not that impressive. A lot of us can't really fit that for years and years on end, okay? So just remember, as we set out on this goal to build as much muscle as possible, what's a realistic time frame for you to really dedicate yourself to the gym, to your nutrition, to your protein, to your recovery, to your sleep? How do we optimize all of those things to maximize the amount of muscle you can build, 1 to 2 pounds a month maybe. And how long can we actually do that for? So remember, every time you drink alcohol, every time you fall off your meal plan, every time you miss a workout, that's going to take away from your optimization. And so I want you to take the timeline into consideration as well. But this is not a bad example of saying, hey, I've worked X amount of time. If I built 20% more muscle, I'm going to see a 4% uptake in my resting metabolic rate. This could take years to get there. But it's not that it's not beneficial. It definitely is. You didn't hear me say that. It's just really hard for us to do. And a lot of us can't commit to a true building muscle plan because we don't want to have the weight gain that comes with it. Okay. So take that into consideration. If we're building a bunch of muscle and we're using that example, you're also probably gaining weight. And a lot of us don't want to do that. And we're definitely not going to do it for years on end just to see a 4% increase in our basal metabolic rate. Okay. Option 3. This is probably the most accurate total that I've found. So all across the board, the most accurate. And it says that 1 pound of muscle burns 6 to 8 calories more than fat per day at rest. So this would mean that if I had an extra 10 pounds of muscle, I would be burning an extra 60 to 80 calories per day outside of my fat mass, okay? Or more calories than my fat is burning, okay? So this makes sense, all righty? So hear what I just said. 10 extra pounds of muscle, which could take you years to do, is helping you burn an extra 60 to 80 calories. 1 cup of broccoli is 30 calories. 1 cup of rice is about 200 calories, okay? So you've built 10 pounds of muscle to only allow yourself to eat less than a half a cup of rice a day extra than you're used to eating. It has not increased your metabolism very significantly to be able to create this freedom mentality that we think we have if we build muscle. Hey, I hear it all the time. Coaches tell their clients, hey, if you just build muscle, you won't have to diet forever. Your muscle is going to increase your metabolism so much that you can essentially have more freedom with your diet. It's not true. Okay. This option here is, again, probably, it makes the most sense to me. Okay. And I'm, again, just from real life practical examples, option number 1, I gained 10 pounds of muscle, meaning I'm going to burn an extra 960 calories a day. Probably not. Option number 2, I gained 10 pounds of muscle for an extra 4% uptake in my total calories burned at the end of the day. Maybe going to take a really long time to get there. Option number 3, I gained 10 pounds of muscle. Again, going to take a really long time to get there. And I gain an extra 60 to 80 calories per day at rest. Okay. So option number 3 and option number 2 are the ones that stand out the most to me. And again, those 2 options are not impressive at all. You're fighting for 10 extra pounds of muscle, which could take you years, literally years, to get. Most of us will not work that hard to gain that much muscle because we don't want to see a gain in weight. Seeing a complete, and I said this at the beginning, seeing a complete exchange of fat mass to muscle mass, lost 2 pounds of fat, gained 2 pounds of muscle, almost impossible. I'm not going to say it's completely impossible, but almost impossible, especially for the average person, probably the people watching this, to do. And so here's what I want you to know. I want you to know that strength training has tons of benefits. Cardio has tons of benefits. They should be used together, not in separation. You should not say, I'm going to stop doing cardio and only do strength training. You should not say, I'm going to stop doing strength training and only do cardio. That should never happen. You should have a balance between both. And one can be more heavily weighted based on your goals or your preferences or a competition coming up, like a race, or if you're a competitor of some sort. We can always push and pull these ratios, I would say, to be heavily in favor of whatever you're doing or whatever you enjoy. Okay. Now, what are some benefits to strength training and building muscle? Well, 1, quality of life. If you have more muscle, you're generally going to be able to be more active, more strong. You're going to go up and down stairs, left and right, pick up boxes, carry things, carry kids, grandkids, play with your pets, much more than someone who doesn't have a lot of muscle. So muscle will add quality of life. Building muscle and strength training increases endorphins more so than cardio. We get to see in a mirror the direct immediate effects of strength training by something that we would call the pump, right? And so you get to see, man, my butt looks really good, my arms look really good, my back looks really good through strength training. And seeing that in the mirror is going to allow you to have an increase in endorphins. So it's going to help you feel better. Stronger bones and stronger joints. If you've ever noticed, every time you get injured and you go to physical therapy, what do? They have you strength train, okay? They have you doing therapeutic exercises to strengthen the joint that is injured or strengthen the area that is injured, to include stretching and mobility. But there's always a strength portion included with that. So stronger bones, stronger joints. Mental toughness. Strength training is hard. Oftentimes when you're doing cardio, you zone out. You're just like watching a movie, or you're listening to music and you're just walking on a treadmill, or you're going on the elliptical, or whatever the case may be. You can't zone out while you strength train. You have to be mentally tough to push through your reps, to push through the weights, to get to the goal, unless you just simply quit. And again, a lot of us do like that struggle because it feels good. It's immediate gratification. It's an immediate result that we get to see in the mirror by working harder through strength training. So mental toughness is huge. It's going to help you add discipline to your diet. Most people who get on this strength training plan, you're going to pay more attention to your overall macros, which is phenomenal. You're going to try to prioritize protein. You're going to start playing around with when you eat your carbs. You're going to start doing all of these things naturally because you know they fit so well together, whereas that fit doesn't exactly go with just a cardio-based plan. All righty. You're going to get into a better routine. You're going to have better brain function. We know this over and over and over again, because strength training is so mentally stimulant. It just stimulates your brain to be able to have to function and be active much more than while we're doing cardio. Again, people can go on miles and miles of runs and they're like, hey, what'd you think about why you were running? And they're literally like, I have no idea. I just kind of zoned out, right? So that does not happen with strength training. The biggest one, I will say, the most important factor of strength training, because diabetes is so prevalent in our population, is better usage of glucose and sugar regulation and uptake. Building more muscle, and the act of building more muscle, strength training, is going to pull primarily from carbohydrates, where cardio pulls primarily from fats. So we're going to have better regulation of carbs, better regulation of blood sugar, and therefore we are going to have better results or a better effect to target diabetes or pre-diabetics. Okay, we all love carbs, so if you do want to eat more carbs shamelessly, I guess, and this should be regulated. It's not a free for all. You're not allowed to eat all the carbs you want because you strength train, but you could have more carbs because you're strength training with less side effects with your blood sugar because of the active strength training, and that your muscle is primarily using glucose for energy. Okay, so we're going to be able to regulate those hormones. We're going to be able to regulate those sugars. All right. Now, less overuse injuries from cardio. This depends on the program. And so if you consistently do the same workout over and over and over again, there are going to be some overuse programs. So I hope you add some variety. But let's say you are just a walker or a runner, just avid, and you just run your life away. Your overuse injuries will come much sooner than someone who is strength training. Okay, so know that as well. All righty. So quick recap. Does muscle burn more calories than fat? Yes. How much more? Not that impressive. 60 to 80 calories per day, which is 2 cups of broccoli or a third of a cup of rice. Again, not that impressive for 1 pound of muscle. This is going to take you a month to do if everything was perfect, or you fit one of those 3 categories that we talked about in the beginning. And to build 10 pounds of muscle is very hard. It is a very long-term goal. And oftentimes you are not going to like the weight gain associated with the muscle gain. So you're probably not going to gain 10 pounds of muscle either. What it looks like is you're probably going to gain a couple pounds of muscle, and then hopefully we lose a bunch of fat and a bunch of weight somewhere along the way. And that's why you should work with a coach to figure out your programming and to figure out your schedule and to figure out what you can handle. Again, from a lifestyle standpoint, from a goals standpoint, can you take the side effects? When you lose a bunch of weight, are you going to be okay with losing some muscle as well, getting weaker as well? That happens. Okay. So no matter what your trainer says, muscle is not that much more activated or much more what's the word I'm looking for? Metabolically active than fat. Okay, 60 to 80 calories a day per pound. It's not that big of a deal. Okay. Second thing is, do you have the discipline and are you going to be okay with the scale to build the muscle? Because if we are building a bunch of muscle, we're going to gain some weight. Third, I don't want you to let go of your cardio routine to just build muscle. I want you to do both. Fourth, I hope that your nutrition is supporting whatever you're doing so that you can optimize your program and see results faster. One tried and true way to make sure you see very little results is to eat terribly. And then five, am I on five or four? Four or five. Don't forget about all the other benefits of strength training program, which mean so much more than just are we burning more calories at the end of the day. Okay. Hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, reach out. I will post the links to the websites and the research articles in the little information section below. But go strength train, go do your cardio, go eat correctly, do all of the things in accordance with what's doable for you. Don't go jump off a cliff and say, I'm going to commit to strength training 6 days a week and being perfect on my diet and so on and so forth. If that's not realistic, only going to let yourself down.